Well, today in our study of the book of Revelation, we come to a very controversial passage. It's a passage that has been used and actually misused or abused by many groups throughout the church's history, especially by some rather cultic groups in nature. And that is in Revelation chapter 7, there is a vision where a number is given to a group of people, the 144,000. So we want to look at this passage today. Who are they? What do they represent? What is God saying through this vision of the 144,000? And this is in Revelation chapter 7. And I'm going to just introduce this passage by reading the first 4 verses. After these things I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, and that the wind should not blow on the earth, on the sea, or on any tree. Then I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, Do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. And then verses 5 through 8 just names various tribes of Israel and talks about 12,000 from each of these tribes being sealed by God. Now notice here's the scene. There is about to be something unleashed upon the earth. And there are 4 winds on the earth, and these angels are, in a sense, commanded to hold back the winds from the earth. And here comes the cry, don't hurt the earth, don't hurt the sea, until we have sealed the servants of God, and we have put a seal on their forehead. Now this is extremely important in this part of the book of Revelation, because as we have seen, the wrath of God is about to be poured out in the day of the wrath of the Lamb. That was the opening of the 6th seal in Revelation chapter 6. But now there's a pause. It's almost as if there's a parenthesis where this cry goes out, don't do anything to the earth, don't do anything to the sea, until we have sealed the saints of God on their forehead. Now there are many that say this simply represents the ethnic Jews during some dispensational period called the tribulation. However, I would again remind you that in the book of Revelation, numbers are very seldom to be taken literally, but they are symbolic. For example, our text says the 4 corners of the earth. Well, do you believe in a flat earth? Or do we believe the earth is round? Well, there's not really 4 corners of the earth. That's symbolic. In other words, in all the earth, 4 corners of the earth, from everywhere and including everything, 4 corners of the earth. Well, who are these, and what could possibly be meant by this number 144,000? Well, here's what I believe, and again, I would refer you to the required reading to get more of the details. But I believe this is a picture of the full and triumphant church. We're introducing this vision here, but there's a follow-up vision in Revelation chapter 14 that will give us even more details. Now, we have seen the number 12 and 24. There are 24 elders, and we have seen from Revelation chapter 4 that this means the fullness of all of God's people from the old covenant and the new covenant. There were 12 tribes, 12 apostles, and so we see 12 plus 12 is 24. Well, now it's not just 12 plus 12, it is actually 12 times 12. So it is even greater, 144,000. 12,000 times the 12 tribes. And we see this multiplying, and by 10, 12 by 10, 144,000. We see it coming out. And we see this number, the high power of 10 means a great quantity, innumerable. And we see this innumerable by the 10th high power of tens, rather. I said that wrong, power of tens. And we see that in chapter 9:16 and 21-7 and 21:16. And so I believe these numbers are symbolic. But it basically means the full and triumphant church. All that compose the church of Jesus Christ are included here. Now, I think what's even more significant than the number is what is taking place. They are being sealed. In other words, no judgment is going to happen. It's going to be restrained until all of God's people are sealed. That's the vision. In other words, the earth can be hurt at a future time, and the sea will be hurt at a future time by God, but God's people will be sealed. They will be marked off as if to protect them from these judgments that will come. Well, in Song of Solomon 8:6, we see that the seal is used as a sign of ownership. In Esther chapter 3 verse 12, the seal is used as a sign of genuineness. And it is also used in Matthew 27 verse 66 to prevent tampering, like they put a seal on the tomb of Jesus. So to protect and to guarantee or certify genuineness and a sign of ownership. And I believe all of these are true about the people of God. That before the judgment of God comes upon the earth, God knows those who are His. God knows those that belong to Him. And they are sealed. Now in the New Testament, this whole idea of seal takes on yet another meaning, and that is the Holy Spirit seals those who belong to Jesus. 2 Corinthians 1:20-22 says it is God who establishes us, anoints us, who also has sealed us and given us the Spirit in our hearts as a guarantee. And so the Holy Spirit is like that seal in our life. Ephesians 1:13-14 says, having believed you were sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise, who is the guarantee of our inheritance until the redemption of the purchased possession. Ephesians 4:30, do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. So we see there are 144,000 in this vision who are sealed. And I believe that all three of the usages of seal apply. It's a guarantee of ownership. It is also to certify genuineness and to prevent from tampering. That when the judgments of God come, the saints of God will be sealed. And certainly we know that in the life of a believer, Romans chapter 8, verse 9, verses 15 and 16, that unless you have the Spirit of God, you do not belong to Him. And you can be led by the Spirit. And the Spirit bears witness with our spirit that we are His child, are His children. 1 John 3:24, by this we know that He abides in us by the Spirit whom He has given to us. 1 John 4:13, by this we know that we abide in Him and He in us, because He has given us of His Spirit. Now notice in chapter 7 of Revelation, in verse 3, it says, do not harm the earth, the sea, or the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And so we see something similar to this. A white stone is given to them, and a new name. Those that overcome in 2:17. Those that overcome in 3:12. Written on him the name of my God. Chapter 22:4. They shall see His face, and His name will be on their forehead. And 2 Timothy 2:19 says, the solid foundation of God stands, having this seal, the Lord knows those that are His. Well, here's what's happening in the book of Revelation. The judgments of God are about to be poured out. There's a pause after the opening of the sixth seal, and now this pause includes God showing us a group of people that represent the full church and the triumphant church. And we'll see more about this in chapter 14. They're singing a new song, the song of the redeemed. And they have not defiled themselves. This is all from chapter 14. They are justified. They are without fault before God. And they follow the Lamb. All of these things are said of this group of 144,000 that we see in chapter 14. But here is a significant thing. God is going to show us in the next several chapters judgment being poured out upon the earth. Because that which is on the earth that shouldn't be, it has to be dealt with. Go back to the vision of the scroll again. It has to be dealt with. But we need to rest assured that God's people will not come under the wrath of God and the judgment of God. We are sealed. Now in Psalm chapter 91, a psalm of Moses that I believe applies to the Exodus, in verses 4 through 7, he says, 1,000 shall fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. Only with your eyes will you see and behold the reward of the wicked, that the recompense unto the wicked. Only with your eyes are you going to see that. In other words, you're going to be kept, even though it might be happening all around you. And in the book of Exodus, there's a very good example of this. Remember when the judgments of God were coming against Egypt? They did not fall upon God's people. In chapter 9 of Exodus, we see the judgment of God coming upon the Egyptian animals, but not on the animals of Israel. We see fire and hail coming upon the Egyptians in 9, 22, and 26 of Exodus, but not on the people of Israel. The firstborn die of Egypt in 11, 4 through 7 of Exodus, but not upon those who had the blood over their doorposts, not upon the children of Israel. God had said, when I see the blood, I will pass over. In 15:26, God said in Exodus, I will put none of the diseases on you that I'm putting upon the Egyptians. In chapter 8, verses 22 through 24 of the book of Exodus, God said, there will be a difference put between my people and the Egyptians. The judgments of God will be falling upon the Egyptians, but not upon the Israelites in Goshen. There will be darkness in all of Egypt, but there will be light in Goshen. And in like manner, in the last days, when God begins pouring out His judgments and His wrath upon a rebellious, even demonic, satanically inspired world and world systems, God's people will be sealed. You'll be kept. You'll be protected. You do not need to fear the judgment and wrath of God. Zechariah 2:5 talks about a wall of fire around her, and God will be the glory in the midst of her. And I believe that will be the case in the end times as well. God will put a wall of fire, as it were, around His people, and He will be the glory in the midst of His people. See, these 144,000 that represent the full and triumphant church of Jesus Christ, they will be sealed by God. God will certify their authenticity or genuineness. God will put His stamp of ownership upon them, and God will see to it that they are not tampered with when these judgments and this wrath of God begins to fall. God knows those that are His. And this stands sure. Well, if you are a born-again believer, now I want to clarify this. I believe the church is plagued with what many have called easy believism, where we say, oh, if you just said the sinner's prayer, then you're going to be kept, everything's going to be all right. No, you got to be a sincere, overcoming Christian. And His grace will enable you to overcome. It's not our own strength. We will go through trials, and we will fall down, but the Lord will pick us up. But we have to be striving to live an overcoming life. And that's what the book of Revelation is really all about. The triumph of the Lamb and the victory that He shares with His people. And a part of that victory is God's people will be sealed. The full triumphant church, represented by the 144,000, they will be sealed. Now, we're going to, in the next lesson, we're going to go further into this chapter 7 and see that these sealed people will find themselves even in the midst of trouble all around them, but God will supernaturally be keeping them and protecting them and providing for them. So you do not need to fear. That's the message of these first 4 verses of Revelation chapter 7. So I trust that you will know the work of the Holy Spirit in your heart, that guarantee of the Holy Spirit will already be in you as a believer, so that you will never need to fear the things that are going to come upon the earth as shown us in these visions to come in the book of Revelation. Be one of the sealed by receiving Jesus Christ and living for Him.
for from you are